Good day and welcome, everyone. Brian Smith, publisher of All Hurricanes. Welcome to another edition of the Miami Hurricanes Team Podcast. Just trying to get a little more information out today about what's coming up for Miami this season in 2023. Number one here, this is all about O-line, and if you are a stats guy, I've got some of that here and how impactful they can be, some of the things that do well for offensive lines and don't, and trying to combine them. The key word often is chemistry, but injuries, new players, transfer portal, recruiting, guys changing positions. Offensive line is by far the most complex position on a football team. And that goes beyond D-line, and that's saying something because D-line with the different fronts now, 4-2-5, 3-3-5. I've even heard of 5-1-5. I've heard all kinds of things here recently, digging into some of the different coverages. That's another love of mine, studying that. But sticking with Miami's offensive line, Pro Football Focus just came out with their preseason All-ACC first team, and 3 of the players were Miami Hurricanes. Now, everybody has their opinion, and recently they did a rundown of the top schedules in terms of worst, easiest, if you will. And Miami was like 6th easiest in the Power 5, which I thought was ridiculous. But they did clarify it by saying it's just based on last year's records. I did a podcast about that too. That you got to be careful what numbers you look at. There has to be some subjectivity. To that point, this is a subjective thing. So, I mean, if they think 3 guys from Miami will make it up front, okay. I think those guys they picked are pretty darn good players. But let's talk about the more important thing. If you're a fan, you want the players to do good. How good is that going to help Miami be win-loss wise? That's bottom line, right? You want to win games. You can have individual players ball out and you can still be a poor football team. But if you have, let's just say, those 3 at least combined to be first or second team, you'd still be probably in pretty good shape offensively. Wouldn't you think? And if you really did get all 3 of those guys on there, what would your expectation be with a senior quarterback, with 2 possible NFL wide receivers, and a pretty good unit of running backs, and some question marks at tight end, but certainly a deep and talented room? They've got to figure out who their main guy is after Will Mallory left. But all of that sounds like there's some possibility for a really good 2023 Miami Hurricanes offense together. And that's the bottom line. Last year, Miami averaged, I believe it was 23.6 points per game. That's terrible. That's terrible. But can you get to that next level via the offensive line? That's something Cristobal wants to do. Mirabal, his best buddy, is the offensive line coach, really good coach. And they needed more talent. They needed guys that fit their scheme better and had the ability to adapt on the fly, etc. So they brought in good recruits and transfer portal guys. And this is what this podcast is going to be about. Now, before I dive into the 5 questions that I put at All Hurricanes, and I'm going to use those directly on here in the podcast, just for fun, if you're sitting at home and you got a moment, I'm going to read off 3 different stats. But I'm going to say what the category is first, and then I want you to think in your head, okay, Miami ranked here or had this much yardage, yada, yada, yada. It's pretty basic. It's a guess. It's just for fun. These are 2022 statistics only. Just Miami, just 2022. Nationally, not ACC, but nationally. Where did Miami rank out of 131 teams in rushing? If you want to throw out the number in your head, whatever. Again, this is just for fun. Where did Miami rank? 128.3 yards and 84th. Not good. Same question. Passing game. And if you want to guess yards, if you want to guess rank, whatever, fire away. Think about it in your head for a second. Then I'll read it off. Ready? 239.1 yards, 60th in the FBS out of 131 teams. Finally, this is a stat that wins and loses games all the time at any level, and it's a culmination of a lot of factors. 3rd down percentage conversion. Where did Miami rank nationally in 3rd down percentage conversion? It's a very important stat. Teams that don't do well here, they tend to fall off a cliff in big games. As a matter of fact, they oftentimes get smoked. Miami wasn't horrible by any means, but still only 40%, which ranked 55th in college football. Just some things to think about. So, and again, they averaged 23.6 points. I didn't even want to dive into the red zone numbers. Miami just didn't figure that out. I'm not even going to go into the numbers. They're bad. They weren't clutch. And that's what Miami of old used to be. No question. Like them, love them, hate them. You can't argue that the 80s, 90s Canes and some of the early 2000s Canes, they could be a 3rd and 11 from the 11. Horrible. They might score. They had guys that figured it out up here as much as with their legs and their brawn. It was a great unit. That's why they won games. So I'm going to go over the transfer portal as well as some of the recruits and what I think is going to happen. Now, again, I came up with this based on this from Pro Football Focus. So thanks to them for coming out with their prediction, and that's cool. But also note that it's anybody's opinion. Preseason prediction, there's relevance to it because, I mean, you got to dig into it. It's not easy, man. Backing this up, I mean, because you're going to look like a fool if you pick 11, 12 guys on a unit, depending on how you do it, and you miss on like 9 or 10. You got to put some thought into it because there's a heck of a lot of good players in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So, especially O-line, which is hard. I thought it was intriguing, and that's why I did this article. It's at All Hurricanes, and I put this in the article, this very podcast, because 3 out of 5 is a lot. It's impressive. So I'm going to dig into that. All right. First question. When you think about Miami, obviously Cristobal wants to get into it and be a power football team. But to do that, no matter the talent, I mean, they got Matt Lee, Javion Cohen. We came over from UCF, Cohen from Alabama. You've got Arnaz Cooper that played as a freshman. He got thrown into the fire. He's at Pleasant Grove High School in Alabama. Jalen Rivers. You got Francis Maligoa. You got Samson Ogunwola. You got some talented cats that are coming back. And then there's the big wild card. And I've talked about him recently on my countdown to Canes at allhurricanes.com. Zion Nelson. I mean, he got hurt last year. He had a setback, etc. That is the wild card. If things don't work out there, I get it. You just don't know about injuries, especially with bigger guys. So that's my big caveat. If he doesn't get a play, say past game 2 or something, it's going to screw it up. I get it. You have to guess one way or the other which direction he's going. I haven't heard anybody say that he's not going to be the guy at left tackle. It is what it is. So I'm going as if he's going to play and be effective. Do note that. So it brings up my first, and this is the biggest question I have with any offensive line, any given year. What's your chemistry going to be like? Do you gel together and play as 5? Offensive line, if you think about it comprehensively, is 5 guys that, they may be going in different directions at a pass pro or etc. But they have to understand how each other move, how quickly they do it, how much they can assimilate to plays. My strength is X, but the guy next to me, man, he's not that good. May need to give him a little more help. If we're in a zone blocking scheme, if we're washing left because they got a stud at defensive end and I'm the left guard and I'm uncovered, I may try to think about getting back a little bit further to get to that. There's all kinds of little nuances. The more time you have together, though, the more time you have to figure that out. Pass protection is probably the harder of the two, and most O-linemen will tell you they prefer run blocking. But I'm concerned about pass protection for 2 reasons. Number one, it's just hard. So not all these guys, even as much talent as they have, and it's a bunch. Nelson, Lee, Cohen, Rivers, Cooper. They have 5+ guys that are, I'm not even counting the freshmen, that have a possibility to at least go to NFL training camp if they even come close to maximizing their talent this year and or next year, whatever it may be. Eligibility varies. So I'm curious to see how much they mesh. And then you throw in Maligoa, Big Francis, out of IMG Academies from American Samoa originally, very talented young man. And then out of Thayer Academy up in Brockton, Mass., just outside of Boston, Samson Okunlola, who I thought as a pure offensive tackle was the best offensive tackle in the country. Francis might have been the best offensive lineman in general. I think he can be guard or tackle. It doesn't matter. He's just a freakazoid. So which one of these guys blends in the best? Which one of these guys figures it out first? How will they line up? This is just kind of my guess. But at some point this season, and again, I'm assuming Zion's going to be healthy. Zion at left tackle, left guard, kind of depends, but I'm going to say Cohen. He could play left or right. It's not a huge deal. Matt Lee's definitely the center that he brought over from UCF, future NFL player. I guarantee it. Miami fans will really like him. Very well-spoken young man, very intelligent, very respectful, and he's a bull. He is what you want on and off the gridiron. He will do very well. Cooper is intriguing. Him and Rivers, I'm not sure, and maybe Rivers plays left or something like that, but I have a feeling they're going to kind of battle at right. Maligoa could be in that battle at right guard as well, but he could also be tackle. They need more tackles. Maybe Rivers plays some tackle. I don't know. He's got experience to do it. It's another way you could look at it. And again, they need to figure it out, quote unquote, sooner rather than later because chemistry. That is my question. It's the number one thing I think for the offense in general because even one slip up, even one, can cause a hit on a player that causes an injury, causes a game, both, whatever. And obviously, the first thing you think of is Tyler Van Dyke. If you don't have proper chemistry and you're in pass protection against a quality team, and by the way, A&M's coming to town, second game, they got dudes everywhere up in their front seven. Not just D-line, front seven, and they'll bring a lot of different exotics. They're going to throw the kitchen sink into Miami's offensive line, period. If you jack around with them, they will smoke you up front. So how good is that going to be? I'm hoping that by, let's say, week 2 of fall camp, Miami has a pretty good idea of who's going to start so that chemistry can really gel as much as it can. I know there's some, when you bring in 2 transfers and possibly one or the other freshman, maybe it's Okunlola that has a great fall camp and maybe he's the right tackle. Whatever it is, they've got options, which is good. And they've got some other young players too. Somebody has to step up. The only other thing with that, I'm really hoping that one of the other younger offensive linemen that can play tackle at least pushes because you got to have depth. You got to figure at some point one of the tackles is going to miss a game. Very important. Yet when you don't have offensive tackles that can pass protect, that's going to be rough. You got to count on that. So number 2, which players are going to be good at their job? You know, they block, but they're also guys that can get into the game and they can help make adjustments. They can help lead when something goes wrong in a drive, just pure leadership. Again, I think Matt Lee's going to be that guy, and I'm very comfortable with stating that. But he's the new guy. Who's the older guy that's been in the program that also does that? That's a huge question, and every football team needs a player that can rally the troops. I know it's an old saying. It's still true. Matt Lee's my pick. I know him. I've covered UCF. He's a guy that he's just very easy to be around, very comfortable, and he's a great football player. So he earns respect with his performance between the white lines. And Matt also will go out and put a guy on his back. Who's the other guy that does that? Is it Zion, etc.? Maybe it's Jalen. I don't know. They need at least one other guy because, again, it's 5 people up front. There are different things you got to talk about. The tackles, the interior play. Is it something with a running game they struggle with? How do they adapt in game when you can't go back out to the practice field? You're gonna have stuff like A&M, I guarantee you, is going to throw stuff at them that they had no idea was coming. None. And the only time they can adjust to it is in the game. You're going to need leadership to make that happen. And not just from Mario, not just for Mirabal. You know, those 2 guys are really good coaches, but there could be something that you see on a third down. Don't want to waste a timeout. And you know, this stuff is weird. Like, I don't remember seeing this in practice. How do you adjust? And you got 3 seconds before that ball is snapped. Is there a signal you give to your buddy? Whatever. You got to communicate. That is the definition of leadership on the offensive line in college football. That last second thing that happens. It's going to happen against Clemson. They're famous for throwing junk at you that you don't expect. Teams are going to do that. That's the way you win, is to overcome. Can this unit protect bar better than 22? This is kind of my basic question. This is the layup of the group. If it doesn't, the team's going to be right around 500. I could just stop there, but I wanted to bring this question in for another reason. It should be the expectation that this is a question that's laughed at. If you're not laughing at this, if you're not saying, why did I ask this? What are you doing, bro? Well, there was a reason. That's a setup question. This offensive line should be twice as good because a couple of things. Number one, for the love of mankind, you cannot have 3 offensive linemen out with injury. I don't care if you are the best team in the NFL going into you lose 3 O-linemen, you are screwed. It is not going to go. My first question, what was it? Chemistry. You're not going to have it. You're not. 2, with that, winning and getting better on the offensive line, it kind of festers, but in a good way. Confidence builds, man. If they go out and they run for 180, let's just throw an easy number out, against A&M, and it includes a 55-yard touchdown run from Henry Parrish Jr., and it's the game sealer, Miami wins 27-24. Just thrown out of school. Like, they opened a hole that your grandmother could run through. Henry pretty quick, so he's going to be okay there. But, I mean, just a massive hole, critical play, 3rd down and 2, final drive, 2 minutes to go. Van Dyke hands off to Parrish. Counter, boom. They open it up, parts like the Red Sea. Can they capitalize from that and truly trigger their own selves? Okay, hey, man, we proved we can do it against the front because there's a bunch of NFL talent in A&M's front. Say what you want about their offense. They don't have a defensive problem there. And if they can do that and win a game, like have a moment, a special moment, how does that change the unit, the offense, and the team? You have to be able to do those things consistently to get there, but it starts with the one. Like, you have to have a game against a talented team where there's a moment everybody's watching and you hammer it home and you prove it. That's why I asked this, because this unit is going to be better. Well, it's going to be based on big moments, man. Getting a little better, and just they could show up and be better than last year, but big moment kind of deals. In the red zone, short yardage plays, will the Canes be able to impose their will? That is question number 4. In my preseason prediction article I did not that long ago, I talked about 30-plus touchdowns rushing. So I'm obviously saying that I think so. And I think that's going to be their key. I'm more concerned about key pass protection because that's a lot of mental stuff, checks, playing on the road. It goes beyond the physical, and that's why O-line is so difficult. Again, 5 guys trying to basically do the same thing, even though they're not always going the same direction. It's an oxymoron, but that's college football, and that's football in general. How are they going to impose their will? 2 points here. Number 1, you need a bread and butter play, something that you can rely on. Is it zone? Is it gap? Is it toss sweep? Is it an RPO play that you use over and over and you hand it off and they finally succumb to the fact they're going to have to dive into the box, and then Tyler pulls it and throws a slant to X and he takes it to the house? Like, how are you playing off of that and dominating in the red zone so much? There's different ways you can do that with the run game, by the way. RPO makes it very convoluted in a good way. But can they win those 3rd down and 2, 4th down and 1 battles over and over again? Again, they weren't horrible on 3rd downs last year, despite, Van Dyke missing time, 3 different quarterbacks, were in the games. That's not good. But they still can't finish 55th in the nation on 3rd down percentage. They just can't. With Miami's incredibly gifted group of starters at the skill spots, I mean, like, all these guys that are starting should at least get invited to the NFL Combine in some capacity whenever they leave. That's my guess, barring injury and all that kind of stuff. So what are you going to do to get over that hump? I'm curious about the individual play, and then are they consistent, meaning if a team's really good at taking that away, can they, again, it goes back to chemistry, can they adapt? So if you're confident in what you've done, you have a good game against A&M, etc., you should be able to be a dominant team, run downhill. The Lord only knows Miami's going to be massive up front. Holy crap, they're going to be huge. It's going to be an Alabama, Georgia kind of offensive line. So you should be able to run downhill. And if they can't get at minimum, I may not be right on 30 plus, but if they can't run for 25 touchdowns this year, either one of two things probably happened. There are a couple others possibly, but injuries aside, they just chose to throw the ball more in the red zone, which that's their own deal, or B, they failed. If you're throwing it and Van Dyke's just hitting, money ball after money ball in the red zone, okay, whatever. I care less if I missed on the prediction. On the other side of that, if it's a situation where Miami really failed because they got stuffed too many times on 4th and 1, or they didn't score, or they had to go for field goals, whatever, in the red zone, and they don't really do well. Last year, again, as I mentioned earlier, red zone wasn't clutch. I don't care if it's a super high percentage against teams that are up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I care about Louisville, NC State, North Carolina, Texas A&M, Florida State, and Clemson. Those are the 6 teams, at least going into the season, that Miami is going to face that has the most talent. Question 5, and it's right off of the point I just made. During big games, do the Canes show up and show out? And I'm talking about the big guys up front. I brought up the A&M game a couple of times already. Guys like Shamar Stewart, he's from Miami, ironically. All these different guys they're recruiting. Can they have a game, especially by, I forget the order, but by like game 7 or 8, besides A&M, can they have a game where they go up against a squad and I'll just call them out. North Carolina's defensive coordinator is not very good. They were 112th and 105th the last 2 years. He's terrible. You have to be able to run them over. That'll be a are you kidding me game if Miami doesn't run for minimum of 150 yards, and quite frankly, it should probably be 2. Again, barring injuries, and there's goofy things that go on. And for the record, North Carolina didn't lose 1, but both of their corners, I think they both one transferred to Texas A&M, Tony Grimes, ironically. Forget where the other guy went, but you can't be a good team if you can't take on other quality competition. Carolina's got talent. I just don't think their scheme's very good. And every now and then you just bludgeon somebody. We showed up and we showed out because NC State's going to have a pretty good run defense. Clemson will. Florida State has got a lot of talent on their defense. They're not necessarily super deep, but their starters are at least pretty big, pretty good. They got a couple NFL guys. One of those games you need to show up and show out and dominate. I think they can do that multiple times beyond the A&M game. And take it however you want. I study Miami literally every single day of the year. It's just my job. And I don't think there's going to be a situation where even remotely, where I'm going to see Miami get shut down and get held below 100. There's a game this year where they run for under 100, and I know it's goofy with the sack totals because if you don't know, in college football, sacks count against rushing totals. It's stupid. It should come off the passing total, but don't get me started. Sack society, that at least there shouldn't be a game under 100, even if Van Dyke is just on fire, because he can run too, and they've got enough size to eke out. Think about it. You only need to average 25 yards a quarter to get to 100 yards. So even if he throws for 330 in a game and they win, they have 100 rushing yards. That may not be a good sign. So to kind of conclude, I think Miami's offensive line, while I don't know if all 3 will make All-ACC, I understand the idea that PFF came up with. Pro Football Focus picked all 3, Zion, Cohen, and Lee, I believe it was. Let me make sure that I got the 3 right. But if you even have 3 guys in that conversation, and that is the 3, that's incredible. It's really incredible. Because if you look at the units in general, if you get 2 guys on an offensive line or a defensive line, they got 4 guys usually. That's pretty damn good. But to get 3 out of 5 is over 50%. That's some credit. Now let's see Miami go out and do something with it. So that's also obviously a very important thing. But if Miami's offensive line can be anywhere as good as what PFF is thinking or what I'm talking about, again, I think they'll have around 30 rushing touchdowns, give or take, maybe a little over. If they can do that, there's no reason not to go at least 8-4. Just my opinion. So please like this podcast. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And of all things that you do, please comment. If there's something you want me to write about at All Hurricanes, fire away. Something you want me to talk to Alex Donnell about for his Locked On podcast or an article that he does, something for his mailbag, by all means. And finally, just let me know what you think. The offensive line, do you expect something different than I did? Maybe you think another offensive line unit in the ACC or otherwise is going to be better? Whatever it is, let's talk about it. With that, everybody have a great day.